Welcome to my YouTube channel, Heardbreak Chronicles, a place where you will hear a large number of fascinating and intriguing chronicles about hearts that are completely broken by female betrayal. Let's not drag on for long. Let's get straight to the point. I raised my glass, smiling at my wife, surrounded by our closest friends and family. To fatherhood, I declared, as everyone cheered. But my smile hid a secret. I knew everything. And in the next moment, I played the recording, her own voice, confessing it all. The room fell silent. Her face turned pale. This was the moment of truth. Brief description of the story, part breakdown. Part 1. The announcement. The protagonist's wife, Emily, shares the news of her pregnancy. Overjoyed, he begins dreaming of their future as a family. But strange details soon surface, and doubts creep in. Part 2. A suspicious truth. The protagonist, Jack, discovers hints that something isn't right. He overhears a conversation and realizes Emily might be lying about the pregnancy. Part 3. The betrayal revealed. Jack digs deeper and discovers that Emily's pregnancy is a complete fabrication. A desperate attempt to keep him after he unknowingly caught her in a betrayal. Part 4. The game begins. Instead of confronting Emily immediately, Jack decides to play her game. He pretends to believe her lie, while secretly collecting evidence. Tension builds as he asks probing questions and sets traps to catch her in contradictions. Part 5. The grand setup. Jack organizes a celebration for the future fatherhood, inviting their friends and family. Emily is thrilled, thinking her lie has worked perfectly. Little does she know, the event will be her undoing. Part 6. The public exposure. During the party, Jack plays a recording of Emily confessing the truth. The crowd is shocked, and Emily is humiliated. Jack walks away, leaving her to face the consequences. If someone had told me that my life would take a wild turn one Sunday morning, I wouldn't have believed it. But that's exactly how it started, on an ordinary morning at our kitchen table. My wife, Emily, sat across from me, a strange smile on her face, her eyes shimmering as if she had just won the lottery. "Jack, there's something important I need to tell you," she said, nervously playing with the edge of her shirt. Her tone caught my attention. I set my coffee cup down and focused on her, feeling an odd mix of excitement and worry. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was already racing. She took a deep breath, placed her hand on mine, and smiled softly. Her hand felt warm, but there was a slight tremble in her fingers. I'm pregnant, Jack," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. Time froze, my mind filled with flashes of the future. Tiny hands wrapped around my finger, first steps, first words, family dinners. I felt like my chest would burst with joy. This is the best news I've ever heard." I pulled her into a tight hug. For a moment, everything felt perfect. I was going to be a dad. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. Emily and I started making plans, dreaming about the nursery, picking out baby names, and imagining our new life together. I couldn't keep the news to myself. I called my best friend, Mike, that evening. "Hey, Mike, guess what? I'm gonna be a dad," I said, barely containing my excitement. "No way. That's amazing, man. Congrats," Mike replied, his voice filled with genuine happiness. Life had suddenly taken on a whole new meaning, a brighter, more exciting one. But little did I know, that was only the beginning of a story that would soon turn into a nightmare. The first crack in the perfect picture. First, everything seemed normal. But then small cracks started to appear. Emily began avoiding discussions about doctor's appointments. Whenever I suggested going for a checkup, she would brush it off with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Jack. I feel great. There's no need for unnecessary stress," she'd say. I trusted her. After all, she was my wife, and I had no reason to doubt her. But something deep inside me, an instinct I couldn't ignore, started whispering that something was off. Then came the night that changed everything. I was walking past the bathroom when I heard her talking on the phone. Her voice was hushed, almost conspiratorial. "No, he totally believes it," she said, followed by a nervous laugh. I told you this will fix everything. He won't leave me now. I froze. My heart started pounding so loudly I thought it would give me away. My mind raced. Was she talking about me? About the pregnancy? I wanted to burst in and demand an explanation, but something stopped me. I decided to wait, to gather more information before jumping to conclusions. The search for answers. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As soon as Emily left for a yoga class, I went straight to the bathroom. There, sitting on the counter, was the pregnancy test she had shown me when she first told me the news. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The test was negative. My head spun. I read it again and again, hoping I was mistaken. But no, it was clear, there was no pregnancy. My world started to crumble. I sat down, trying to catch my breath. What did this mean? Was the whole thing a lie? Why would she do this? But instead of confronting her, a new plan started forming in my mind. If this was a game, then I could play too. And I was gonna play to win. Laying the trap. That evening, I kept my cool. I smiled, kissed Emily, and acted like everything was normal. But inside, I was watching her every move, every word, every reaction. Emily, I said casually during dinner, maybe I should schedule an appointment with the doctor for you, just to make sure everything's okay. Her eyes flickered for a brief second, just enough for me to notice. But she quickly recovered, smiling her most charming smile. Of course, Jack. Maybe a little later, though. There's no rush. Everything's under control, she said, waving it off. Her words were calm, but now I saw something different in her eyes. Something nervous. The more time passed, the deeper the cracks in Emily's story grew. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the signs were piling up, and they were getting harder to ignore. She still hadn't scheduled a single doctor's appointment. Every time I mentioned it, she had a new excuse. The clinic is booked for weeks, she'd say one day. The doctor said it's too early for a checkup, she'd say the next. The way she said it was smooth, almost rehearsed, but now I was paying attention. I started asking more detailed questions. So, how many weeks along are you again? About 8 weeks, I think, she answered, glancing away for a split second before forcing a smile. The timeline didn't make sense. She had told me about the pregnancy almost 2 months ago. Shouldn't we be further along by now? A pit began to grow in my stomach. The first clue. One night, after she fell asleep, I decided it was time to find out the truth. I grabbed her phone from the nightstand, feeling like I was crossing a line I'd promised myself I'd never cross. But I had to know. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages. Most of them seemed normal, texts to friends, reminders, shopping lists. But then I saw it. A message from someone named Ryan. I clicked on the thread. My heart sank. Ryan, are you sure this will work? Emily, he believes everything. Don't worry. This will bring us back together. He won't leave once he thinks there's a baby. My stomach dropped. Every suspicion I'd had was suddenly confirmed in black and white. Not only was the pregnancy a lie, but it was part of a plan to trap me. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to wrap my head around what I'd just discovered. Who was Ryan? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, how far was she willing to go to keep up this lie? The betrayal unfolds. The next day, I couldn't even look at her. Every smile, every word she spoke felt like a dagger. But I didn't let it show. Not yet. If I confronted her without proof, she'd find a way to twist the truth. No, I needed more. That's when I made my decision. I was going to let her think I still believed her, all while building my case. I started paying closer attention to everything, her behavior, her phone calls, her explanations. I became a detective in my own home. One night, while she was out with friends, I checked her browsing history. There were searches for how to fake a pregnancy and how long until a fake bump shows. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she do this to me? I'd loved her, trusted her. The turning point. From that moment on, I stopped playing the victim. If she wanted to lie, I'd let her. But I was going to make her regret it. Emily, I said one morning over coffee, I was thinking, We should throw a party, a little celebration for the baby. Just a few friends and family. Her eyes lit up. Oh, that's such a sweet idea. I'd love that. I smiled, hiding my true intentions. Great. I'll take care of everything. She had no idea what was coming. The next phase, gathering evidence. The weeks leading up to the party were like a game of chess. Every move had to be carefully planned. I started recording our conversations, asking questions I already knew the answers to, just to catch her in a lie. So, have you been feeling any different lately? I asked one night. Oh, just a bit tired, and craving weird foods, she said, trying to sound casual. Really? Like what? Pickles? And peanut butter, she said with a laugh. It's so strange. The problem was, I had watched her eat for weeks, and not once had she touched either of those things. I nodded, playing along. That's funny. I'll have to stock up on pickles. Every conversation was another piece of the puzzle. Another confirmation that this pregnancy was a complete fabrication. The final preparation. As the party drew closer, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had everything I needed, the recordings, the messages, even a written timeline of every lie she had told me. But I wasn't just going to confront her in private. No, that would be too easy, too quiet. I wanted everyone to know the truth. I knew I couldn't keep up the act forever. Every day that passed made it harder to stay calm and collected. The lies felt heavier, the false smiles more difficult to fake. But I reminded myself that patience was my greatest weapon. The party was fast approaching, and the thought of what I was about to do sent adrenaline rushing through me. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make sure there was no escape from the truth. But first, I needed to finish gathering every last piece of evidence. Tightening the trap. Every lie Emily told was carefully catalogued in my mind. I recorded conversations whenever I could, capturing her contradictions and vague answers. Each time she slipped up, it felt like another victory. How far along did you say you were? I asked casually one evening. For months, she replied without hesitation. For months. I remembered just a few weeks earlier, she had claimed she was only 8 weeks along. I smiled, pretending to be none the wiser. You must be so excited to finally feel the baby move soon, I added, watching her reaction closely. Her face froze for the briefest moment before she recovered. Oh yeah, I can't wait. Her eyes betrayed her again. She wasn't just lying. She was scrambling to keep her story straight. The final straw. A few days before the party, I found the last piece of the puzzle. Emily had gone out to run errands. But curiosity got the best of me. I decided to follow her. She wasn't going to the grocery store or the doctor's office. She was meeting someone. At first, I couldn't make out who it was. But then I saw him. Ryan. The same Ryan from the messages. I watched as they stood outside a cafe, talking closely. Emily leaned in, touching his arm, laughing at something he said. It wasn't the kind of conversation you'd have with a casual acquaintance. It was something else, something personal. My hands clenched into fists, but I stayed put, fighting the urge to storm over and confront them right there. This wasn't the time for that. Not yet. I snapped a few pictures with my phone and walked away, my heart pounding. Now I had everything I needed. The setup. The day of the party arrived. The house was filled with the smell of catered food, soft music playing in the background, and the buzz of conversation. Friends and family gathered to celebrate what they thought was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in our lives. Emily was radiant, or at least she pretended to be. She moved through the crowd, smiling and laughing, basking in the attention. She had no idea that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. I waited until everyone had a drink in their hand and gathered around for the toast. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice steady. Everyone, I said, raising my glass. Thank you all for coming to celebrate this exciting moment in our lives. Emily and I are so grateful for your love and support. The room was quiet, every eye on me. I took a deep breath, savoring the calm before the storm. But before we toast, there's something I want to share with you all. Something very important. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I've been keeping a little journal of this journey. A few recordings, some conversations that I think you'll find interesting. Emily's smile faltered. Her eyes darted toward me, a flash of panic crossing her face. Jack, what are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. Just sharing the truth, Emily, I said, meeting her gaze. Let's start with this. I pressed play. The first recording. Emily's voice filled the room. No, he totally believes it. Trust me. This will fix everything. He won't leave me now. The room went dead silent. Every pair of eyes turned to her. Emily, I said, keeping my voice calm. Care to explain what you meant by that? Her face turned pale. That's not what it sounds like, she stammered. I was joking. Really? I tilted my head. How about this one? I played another recording, this time, a conversation about the timeline of her supposed pregnancy. It was filled with contradictions and excuses, every lie exposed in her own words. Murmurs filled the room. People exchanged shocked glances, whispering to one another. The moment of truth. Emily looked around, realizing she was trapped. Her carefully constructed story was unraveling in front of everyone she knew. Jack, please, let's talk about this privately, she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. You've had plenty of chances to talk, I said. But instead you chose to lie, to me, to our friends, to our family. And now, they all know the truth. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of relief. This party was supposed to be a celebration of new life, I continued. But instead, it's a reminder of how far someone will go to manipulate the people they claim to love. I set my glass down and turned toward the door. I'm done, Emily. Enjoy the rest of the party. Walking away. As I walked out, I could still hear the shocked murmurs and whispers behind me. Emily was left standing in the middle of the room, exposed and alone. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for weeks finally lifted. I wasn't sure what would come next, but one thing was certain. My life was my own again. Walking out of that party felt like stepping into a new world. A world where the weight of lies and betrayal no longer crushed me. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done with Emily and her web of manipulation. I drove around aimlessly that night, letting the cool air calm me. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls and messages from friends, family, and, of course, Emily. I ignored them all. I needed time to breathe, to think. But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid the fallout forever. The storm was just beginning. The flood of questions. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. Mike, dude, what the hell happened last night? Call me. My mom. Are you okay? We're worried about you. Please talk to us. Emily, Jack, please. Let me explain. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. I love you. Please, we can fix this. Fix this? I laughed bitterly at the message. There was no fixing what she had done. The lies, the betrayal, it was too much. I stayed in bed for hours, replaying every moment in my mind. The way Emily had smiled through her lies. The way she had played me like a fool. And Ryan, how long had they been in touch? How deep did their connection go? I knew I needed answers, but not for closure. No, I needed answers to make sure I never fell for something like this again. The confrontation. Later that day, I finally decided to face Emily. Not because I wanted to listen to her excuses, but because I wanted to put an end to it all once and for all. I walked into the house, and there she was, sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. Jack, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. You never meant to hurt me? Emily, you lied about being pregnant. You faked an entire life to keep me from leaving. Tears streamed down her face. I was scared. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd leave me. And then Ryan, he was just a mistake, Jack. A stupid mistake. I only wanted you back. I stared at her, feeling a strange mix of sadness and anger. Part of me wanted to believe her. We had built a life together after all. But the damage was too great. It wasn't just one mistake, Emily. It was a series of choices, every lie, every manipulation. I gave you my trust, and you destroyed it. Her sobs grew louder, but I remained unmoved. This is over, Emily. You need to pack your things and leave. She looked at me in disbelief. Leave? But where will I go? That's not my problem anymore, I said, my voice steady. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. A new beginning. Over the next few weeks, I slowly rebuilt my life. It wasn't easy. Friends and family wanted to know every detail, offering support and sympathy. I appreciated it, but what I really needed was space. I threw myself into work, went to the gym, and reconnected with old friends. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. One night, Mike dragged me out for drinks. You look like a new man, he said, clinking his glass against mine. How does it feel to be free? Strange, I admitted, but good, really good. Mike smirked. You know what they say, living well is the best revenge. I laughed, raising my glass. To living well, the final twist. Just when I thought the dust had settled, I received an unexpected email. It was from Ryan. Subject, we need to talk. For a moment, I debated deleting it without reading. But curiosity got the best of me. The message was short and cryptic. Jack, I had no idea Emily was telling you those lies. She told me you two were already separated when we got together. I never meant to get involved in this mess. If you want to know the full story, I'm willing to meet and explain everything. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. 1,000 questions ran through my mind. What more could there be to this story? Part of me wanted to leave it all behind, to ignore Ryan and move on. But another part, the part that hated unfinished business, needed to know the truth. I picked up my phone and sent a reply. Let's meet. Tomorrow. The next day, I sat at a small cafe, my eyes locked on the entrance. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. My pulse was steady, but my thoughts raced. What was Ryan going to tell me? Would it even matter? Then the door opened, and there he was. Ryan. Mid-30s, well-dressed, but with a nervous energy that betrayed his calm appearance. His eyes scanned the cafe until they landed on me. He hesitated for a second, then walked over. Jack? He said, extending his hand. I shook it, keeping my expression unreadable. Ryan. We sat down, an awkward silence hanging between us for a few moments before he finally spoke. Thanks for meeting me, he said, fidgeting with his coffee cup. I wasn't sure you'd even respond. Let's just get to the point, I said. What do you know? Ryan nodded, leaning in slightly. Look, I had no idea what Emily was doing until recently. She told me you two had been separated for months. She said the pregnancy was real. At first, I clenched my jaw. At first, he sighed. She was pregnant, but she lost the baby early on, and never told you. My heart skipped a beat. The air seemed to thicken around me. What are you talking about? Ryan continued, his voice low. She told me she was scared, terrified that you'd leave her if she admitted she wasn't pregnant anymore. So, she decided to keep up the act. She thought it would give her time to fix things between you two. I sat back, trying to process what I was hearing. A real pregnancy, a real loss, and then lies stacked on top of lies. She thought lying about it was the solution? I said bitterly. Ryan nodded. It spiraled out of control. I tried to convince her to come clean, but she refused. She thought if you believed the baby was still coming, you'd fall back in love with her. I shook my head, anger and sadness churning inside me. And what about you? What was your role in all of this? He hesitated. I was there for her when she was grieving. One thing led to another and we got involved. But I swear, Jack, I had no idea she was still pretending to be pregnant until much later. The room seemed to close in around me. Ryan's words hit harder than I expected. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a tragedy twisted into a web of deceit. The unspoken truth. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I stared out the window, my mind racing. A part of me felt sorry for Emily, for the pain she must have gone through. But another part of me couldn't forgive the choices she made afterward. "Why are you telling me all this now?" I asked, my voice steady. Ryan sighed. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And I'm tired of being part of her lie." I nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty." He leaned back, visibly relieved. "So what happens now?" "Now?" I said, standing up. "Now I move on. Confronting the past." The conversation with Ryan lingered in my mind for days. I debated whether to confront Emily with the new information or leave it in the past. In the end, I decided there was nothing more to say. She had already packed her things and left the house. The silence felt strange at first, but it was a relief. A chance to rebuild without the weight of constant deception hanging over me. I focused on getting my life back together. I started working out more, picking up new hobbies, and reconnecting with old friends. I didn't talk about what happened with anyone but Mike, who became my sounding board. "You've been through hell, man," he said one night over beers. "But you've come out stronger. Not everyone can say that." I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. "Yeah, it's just strange, you know? To think how quickly life can change." "You'll be better for it," Mike said confidently. "And who knows? Maybe this is just the beginning of something even better." The final test. Just when I thought things were settling down, I received one last message from Emily. It was short but heavy with meaning. "Emily, I'm truly sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me." I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I thought about everything. The love we once shared, the lies that tore us apart, and the strange twists of fate that had brought me to this point. In the end, I didn't respond. Some things were better left in the past. A fresh start. With Emily finally out of my life, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. It was time to focus on myself for once. I signed up for a marathon, joined a photography class, and started traveling more. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real. And after everything I had been through, that was enough. One morning, while running through the park, I noticed a couple with their newborn baby. For a moment, a wave of sadness washed over me. I thought about what could have been, the life I once imagined. But then I smiled, realizing that the future was still wide open. Sometimes, life doesn't go the way you planned. Sometimes, it throws you into chaos, forces you to face the worst parts of yourself and others. But if you're lucky, you come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and ready to start again. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The days turned into weeks, and the storm that had once consumed my life began to fade into the background. I found myself thinking less and less about Emily and the chaos she brought into my life. The house felt quieter, more peaceful, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. I had rebuilt my routine, found joy in the small things again, and rediscovered parts of myself that I had forgotten. I started to feel free, truly free. But closure is a tricky thing. Just when you think you've moved on, life has a way of testing you one last time. The unexpected letter. One morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, no hint of who sent it. Curious, I tore it open and began reading. "Dear Jack, I know you may not want to hear from me, but there are things I need to say. Things I didn't have the courage to say before. I've made more mistakes than I can count, and I've hurt you in ways I'll never be able to make up for. But the truth is, losing the baby broke something inside me. It made me desperate, terrified that I'd lose you too. I thought I could fix it, that if I pretended long enough, everything would go back to the way it was. But lies only create more lies. I see that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope, in time, you'll find peace. You were always the best part of my life. I just wish I'd been strong enough to hold onto that without the lies. Take care of yourself, Jack. You deserve happiness. More than anyone I've ever known. Emily." I sat there for a long time, holding the letter in my hands. The anger I once felt was gone, replaced by something else. Something closer to sadness. She was right about one thing. Lies only create more lies. But despite everything, a part of me believed that her regret was real. Letting go. That letter could have reopened old wounds. But instead, It felt like the final piece of closure I had been waiting for. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer, unsure if I'd ever read it again. For the first time in months, I felt truly ready to move on. Not just physically, but emotionally. The weight was gone. A chance encounter. A few weeks later, life surprised me again. This time, in a way I didn't expect. It happened at the local park. I was sitting on a bench, sipping coffee and watching the world go by, when someone sat down next to me. "Mind if I sit?" she asked with a warm smile. I glanced up, taken slightly off guard. She was about my age, with kind eyes and a presence that immediately put me at ease. "Not at all," I said, shifting to make room. We started chatting, first about the weather, then about the book she was reading, and eventually about life in general. Her name was Rachel, and she had a calm, grounded energy that felt like a breath of fresh air. By the time we parted ways, we had exchanged numbers. As I walked back home, I found myself smiling. It wasn't some grand romantic moment. It wasn't fate or destiny. But it was something simple, something real. And after everything I'd been through, that was more than enough. Lessons learned. In the weeks that followed, I reflected on everything, the good, the bad, and the downright chaotic. Life had thrown me into the depths of betrayal and heartbreak, but it had also given me the chance to start over. I had learned to trust myself again, to recognize the warning signs I had once ignored, and to rebuild from the ground up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Not because I had met someone new, but because I knew I could face whatever life threw at me. The final thought. Sometimes, life doesn't give you the closure you want. Sometimes it gives you something better, the chance to write your own ending. I raised my coffee cup to the morning sky, breathing in the crisp air. "To new beginnings," I whispered. And just like that, I stepped forward into the next chapter of my life. One that was finally truly mine. Thank you very much for listening to this story to the end. I hope you liked. We work for you, looking for and telling you the most effective stories about women's betrayal, shocking intrigue, interweaving the plot and unexpected reactions of angry men. Save us, put likes, write comments, and, of course, subscribe to the channel to not miss any story.